This is my Organised Armoury, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly how to build it step by step. This has been one of my most requested builds for probably about 6 months, but it was just really difficult for me to get something that I was happy with and something that looked good. So before we jump into the build part of the video, let me give you a quick tour so you know what to expect. The first thing you're going to notice is the sort of decorative hearth, and then you've got all of the weapons, all of the bows, all of the magic equipment and shields organized around the outside, and then you have all of the armor sets around these pillars on either side of the build, going from your rag armor all the way to flame metal armor. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I think it works great as a standalone structure with the entrance like this, or if you replace this entrance with a staircase, you could easily make this a really cool addition to any build in the form of a basement. This is what it looks like from the outside. And just a heads up, if you don't want to build this for yourself, I do have all of my world files available to my Patreon members. So if you're interested in that, go over and check it out. All of my builds are available there. With all that said, let's jump into the build part of the video. The first thing you have to do is clear out some land. Now, this build isn't that big. You can see I've already marked out my starting position here, but it's going to be 10 of these stone floor 2x2s deep. So we'll quickly mark that out. And it's going to be 18 stone floor 2x2s wide. Once you've marked out the width and the length, you can go ahead and just fill this whole rectangle in. Once you're done, it should look like this. So it's 10 deep and 18 wide. If you're measuring that in meters, it's 20 meters deep and 36 meters wide. Next up, we just want to mark out the entrance. So I'm going to come in 6, 7, 8, 9, basically just find the center of the build here. And what I want to do is actually just offset this slightly. So I'll place a little block here, and then we can use the stone floor. I'm going to have an entrance that's 3 wide, and I think 2 deep is probably enough. Get rid of this now. And that basically marks out the whole foundation. So we can go ahead and start building up. I'm going to start off with the entrance because I feel like it's the easiest. I'm using the black marble plinth here, and we're basically just building 4 along like this. And we'll have the 5th one on the inside. And we'll need to do this on both sides. I'm just going to fill out the rest of the entrance because I feel like it's pretty easy, so we might as well just get it done. I'm going to do 3 black marble stairs along the front. Let's grab a wooden door, and just on this front one here, we're going to go to probably bottom corner 2. So what we want to do is just create a middle lock point for this hexagonal gate. So you can see this would normally be like the front bit. We just want to edge it back ever so slightly using the lock point that we created with the regular wood door like this. So to finish off the main structure of the entrance, I want to grab now the black marble cornice. We'll come to bottom and there are 2 here, and we'll just basically go along exactly the same as we did in the bottom, but 5 along the top. Grab the groused in medium pillars, top center locking point, and then just locking from the bottom. Moving up, I have to go back to the top center just for these corner points, and then you can start to move up like this. Now I'm going to use the groused wall inverted, locking from the top locking point, and just sort of put in a bit of a edge on these stairs here. So that's a pretty simple little entrance, but I think it looks good, and I think it fits the armory look, because this probably looks like the most durable door to me out of all the options, so I think it fits well with this build. So now we can start to build upwards on the main part of the structure. I'm going to start off with the black marble 1x1s, and at the edge of the structure I'm going to build up 3 high. We'll leave a gap of 3. Come up another 3 high, and then again there'll be a gap of 3 taking us to the corner point here. We're going to need then a gap of 4, and that's going to take us pretty much to the center of the build, so here. So that'll be a gap of 1, 2, 3, and then the 2 halves on either side. And this part is going to be almost doubled up, and we're just going to stagger these blocks. Again, there'll be another gap of 4 taking us to the other side, and then we're going to start going with the gap of 3 again. And if you do it correctly, you should end up with a grid that looks like this. Each one of these will need to be 3 high, so we'll just do that. And then on the opposite side of the build, we're just doing the exact same thing. So we've got it in the corners, we've got the middle section, and then if we just leave a gap of 3 here, we'll also have a little pillar here. And then back to the entrance. So before we do any sort of interior vertical supports, I'm just going to go around and put in the walls, because they're going to give us some structure to the build before we can move on. I'm going to use the wood door again. That's going to just create this snapping point in the middle of these blocks. then I'm going to be using the cage wall 1x1 along the bottom. And then I'll use the cage wall 2x2 like this along the top. And we're going to need to do this for every single gap on the inside of the structure. So depends which way you want to do it. I'm just going to do this like sort of really repetitively with the wood door every time. The only difference is on the edges, you're just going to have a slightly bigger gap. So instead of just the 3 large cage wall 2x2s, you're going to have 4 in these spots. And you're just going up to as tall as these pillars here. So once you're done, it should look like this. Basically a large cage, and all of these cage walls are halfway along the black marble pillars that we created earlier. Now, these walls don't actually have to be iron in order to support the roof or the build structurally. I just like them because this grid allows me to really accurately place the items that I'm going to place on. And I'm actually going to cover this with the Growstone anyway. So if you want to use something else because you don't want to use the iron, then feel free. Just obviously you'll have to make some of your own adjustments on where to place items. So the next thing I want to do is go around each of the non-corner pillars. So ignoring the corner ones, and then we've got all these ones, and basically just building out ever so slightly. Now we are going to come back, remove these and put a torch in the middle, but I just want to sort of mark them out for now, because what that's going to allow me to do is place down some of the interior supports a little bit more accurately. So now with this little ledge in the correct place now, I'm going to use the black marble wide, and I'm going to measure out 2. The third one's going to remain in place, but these 2 are these can just be deleted. Now with the top corner point, this is going to be the central support, and then from here, I'm basically placing down corner to corner each of these black marble columns. So I'll place 1, rotate 2, place 1, rotate 2, place 1, rotate 2. And then at the end, we can jump to a bottom corner, and this is going to need to be 4 high. We're going to be doing the exact same on the other side, so that's 2, third one. Actually, to be fair, you'd probably just snap it on the floor and that would work, but it's just a force of habit from me, from playing around with this build a little bit. And then again, on this side, it's going to be a symmetrical build, so we'll be building this up to the ceiling. From here, we're going to place down a hearth in the middle. This is going to be exactly in the middle of the build, but because the hearth isn't too wide, it's only 1.5 wide, we just need to create a mid-locking point that allows us to find the center of the build in respect to the hearth. From here, I'm going to use the Growstone floor 1x1, lock it along the top, and kind of create a bit of a more aesthetic fireplace. Place it all the way around the hearth here. And then again, we need to find out the middle of these 1x1 sections. So using the wood door, and then finding the middle, I'm going to have the Growstone small pillar here. That looks good. And then to get all the other ones in place, I'm just going to use the cage wall 3 long. Then we'll get all the Growstone small pillars in. Now this one's actually going to be the chimney, so it's actually going to raise above the roof. So here I'm going to go maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll start off with 5 high. If we need to go slightly higher when we come to do it, we can build it at the end. Okay, the pillars look good. I'm going to fill the rest of this in with the iron walls. You can actually use the cage wall 2x2s on the sides and for some of this here. So let's do that. You will actually save iron if you do it this way, because each cage wall 1x1 takes 1 iron, but these 2x2s take 2 iron. So you're basically, if you need to fill in all 4 spots, then it's better to use the cage wall 2x2, because otherwise you'll be using 4 iron if you're just using the cage wall 1x1. So we build up on all sides. And then I actually want this at the bottom to be, I guess, empty. So it gives the idea that you can actually access this fire if you wanted to, even though you can just fill it in from the outside. So whatever you like the best, just go with that. But I like this design here. Okay, so now all the support for the roof is in place. Let me just jump up top so we can start to work on the roof. Now I'm going to start on these outer pillars here because I used this sort of alternating block pattern. I want this block to be the black marble 2x1. Then I'll basically just be using a top locking point, going all the way around the build now. At the entrance, looks like we've already got those spaces, so I'll just use a 1x1. That means since the build's symmetrical, we're going to be using a 1x1 on this side. Then back to the 2x1, following this all the way around for the rest of the build. When you're done, it should look like this. It looks like, I guess, like a fight arena or something right now, but it's not going to obviously end up looking like that. To be fair, I actually think it looks quite good with the open iron walls, but when the items go on, it starts to look like not the best from the exterior. So we're just going to work on that in a second. But what I want to do first is put the roof on. I'm going to use the Growstone floor 4x4. And I want there to be a little overhang, so I'm just going to create the correct snapping point with the wood beam. 1 meter. Grab the Growstone floor 4x4, and I'll grab one of the bottom edges here, so this one. because I don't want this groused floor to be overlapping with this. I just want it to like almost rest on top. I think it looks really good like that. And then basically all we have to do now is fill in all this space along the top with the groused floor. When we get to the edge, you'll notice that a 4x4 is going to be too big on one of the ends. So then we're going to switch to the groused floor 2x2. And then back to the groused floor 4x4, we're basically going to have to start off on one of the sides that is directly connected to the black marble. So if we started off on this end, you can see that's just going to be grousing and grousing. We start on this end, because this is sitting flush right now, we're going to be able to connect directly to the black marble, and that's going to give us more support. So basically, fill in along this end, we have the groused floor 4x4, then we need to make this first contact with the pillar in the center there. Once we've got this pillar in, we can start to build around all of these different spots here. Again, along the back, it's just going to be the groused floor 2x2 just to fill in this gap and create the overhang on the back of the structure. And then you're going to get to a point in the center when it kind of looks like this. Now, you'll notice that these kind of overlap into the middle of this box if you just place them as normal. So like if I placed it like this, you'd see we have that overhang. Now, I think that works fine. I prefer not to have it. So what I'm going to do is connect from this end. So that's connecting to the support in the center here. And then I can basically just go all the way along like this. I can now connect my groused floor 4x4 on this side. And then just to sort of shorten this gap, if we have a support on this side and this side, we can place in the groused floor 1x1 like this. And then yeah, we just need to fill in this gap on this side too. So obviously you've got a little gap there. I don't think it makes too much difference, to be honest. If you want to cover it up, you can do so with like these small beams. Place something like that in there, or even the medium beam would probably be decent. But I'm just going to leave it like this. I want the cage wall to be fairly high up, sort of with respect to the roof here. So I'm going to take the groused and small pillars another further one up, and then from here, that's when I'm going to put the groused floor 2x2 roof on. Because that way I'm going to create this gap so that any additional smoke can vent. Even though with this amount of space, I don't think the hearth down there would go off. I mean, it might, but that looks like, just sort of intuitively, that looks like enough space for the smoke to gather and the hearth not to be affected. But just to be safe, and also just because it looks nicer, I'm going to open it up and let some of the smoke come out. What's great about this build is you don't need to use grousting for it. If you don't have grousting, you can basically create a cage floor 2x2 roof. You can place down either stone or black marble along the top, and then there should be enough support so you can take the cage wall 2x2 out from underneath it once it's all in place. Because the stone floor, for example, when it's supported on all ends, it becomes much more stable. But to actually achieve that in the first place, it's sometimes a lot easier to place in the cage floor 2x2 first. If you wanted to, you can also put a sort of standard wooden roof on this. Now, this is the reason that I have this double pillar in the center here, because that's going to make this side of the structure a good enough length so that the roof pieces meet in the center. And there should be enough strength in order to do that. What you might need to do, however, is take this pillar further up the build and then create some sort of support with wood connecting to the roof. But I really like how this turned out with the roof as it is like this, so I'm going to stick with that. Back onto the roof, we just need to finish off the roof on the entrance. You can see we've got an overhang on the front. If we use the 4x4, I'm going to create the overhang with the 1x1 now on this side, and then let's just do the same for the other side, 2x2 and then 1x1 just to get that overhang. Okay, so this is the sort of exterior of the structure. You can see I've got the entrance here. What I've also had to play around with is, rather than having an entrance here, I actually make this a staircase up to like a different build. So if you wanted to, you can dig out a basement, have your armory in the basement, and I think that looks really good. Before we get started with the interior, if you are enjoying this video, please do leave it a like and subscribe. It's the best way to support me, and you can just unsubscribe later if my content no longer appeals to you. Okay, so the first thing I want to do in here, I think, is just get some lights going, because it looks really dark now that I've put the roof on. So like I said earlier, I'm going to be placing down my torches in these spots here that I created. So all I'm going to do around the build is take out the block, try and place a torch more or less in the center, and then cover it back up like this. So I'll show you it one more time. I'm taking the block out, grabbing the standing iron torch, so it's my go-to torch. You can choose whatever torch you want though, and then placing the block back in like this. After making your way around the base, it's going to look like this, and as you can see already, it's just got much better atmosphere with these sort of fire flames. Another place I like to add torches is in these little gaps here. Now, I've had to play around with this in the past. I think every gap is too much, so I like to place one, then skip one, and then I'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Let's now set up the armor stands, ready for the armor to get placed on. I'm using the wood beam 1 meter here. I'm connecting onto the snapping point that we used originally to place these. Then all I want to do, once I get my armor stand, make sure it's facing the right way. I like to zoom in, and at just this point where it sort of snaps down, it lets me place it in there. Rotate, come around, place it in. And I need to do this around this one and also around the pillar on the far side. Once you've placed all your armor stands, don't forget to go around and just take out these wooden beams that we used to place them. It's just extra things that you don't really need in the build, and it doesn't really add anything either. Now these armor stands are going to be spots for each armor set in the game. I'm going to just place them all in so you don't have to watch, and then I'll quickly talk you through each of these and where I've placed them in. Okay, so I've placed all my armor in now. Obviously I don't recommend just like spawning these in, but as you craft them, as you move through the game, you've probably accumulated a lot of these. So now we have all the armor in place. We just need to go around each of these walls and place in the weapons. So the only thing we need to do now is place in the weaponry. The approach I'm going to be using is these vertical item stands on the cage walls, using the grid to sort of position where I'm going to be placing the item stands. Now obviously this is going to be quite a long process, so I'm going to go and do that. You can take that time to like the video and subscribe. Once I have them all in place, I will show you the layout so that you can copy that, and then I'm going to cover up the locations and we're going to have the final look for the interior. Okay, so I've now placed in all the weaponry, so I'm just going to go around and show you the positions of each one. Obviously if you're recreating this build, you're just going to have to pause it at each stage, copy the layout for the vertical item stands, and then place in the same items. So starting at the entrance going clockwise, we have all the hats and also the flesh rippers, and then we have the two-handed clubs, the pickaxes and the bombs along the top. And then we have all the bows, the crossbows, the knives and bucklers, all the one-handed clubs, all the swords, all the magic equipment, all the axes including the two-handed axes, the dual wield, and then obviously the single arm axes along the bottom. We've got all the tower shields, all the round shields. We have the Eidgers, the two-handed swords, and the spears. Now in terms of where you want to place them yourself, all of these sort of 3-bay displays are interchangeable with each other, and then these 4-bay displays are all interchangeable with each other as well. So now that you've seen where all of the vertical item stands are, you can go back with the ground stone wall 4x2 and the 2x2, and basically my vision for this armory is just as almost like a museum, so I don't really plan on taking these off and putting them back on. If you do want to put something on these item stands, once you take it off, you do have to remove the ground stone wall as well, so that's something to sort of bear in mind. And just in the last one now, ground stone wall 4x2, I like to put them in opposite corners just to have a stagger effect, just if we need them, just to make it look a little bit more natural. Okay, really happy with the interior now. Let's go outside. As you can see, it kind of looks a little bit bland from the outside. Like, I really like the style of it, but I just want to make it look a little bit better. I'm going to grab these ground to medium pillars, start with this, and place down a column in each of the corners. I think this makes a big difference. So that's the ground to medium pillars in all of the corners now, including the back of the structure. And then what I want to do is basically create almost like murals in these locations here. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm firstly going to just frame them with the ashwood poles. I'm not going to have any bother with the weather because they're still underneath the overlap that we placed down earlier. But what I mean by this is basically using things like this wolf adornment. So if I place one here and then also place one above like this, I think that kind of looks like almost like a pack of wolves. Just place in some decorative windows, almost sort of like randomly. Then we can make use of trophies and other items in the game to sort of create something that's a little bit more interesting. So if I place down the dragon egg here, for example, let's use the wood dragon adornment on this side, and almost like just trying to create a bit of a story to your build. I really like how that side's looking. Let's see if we can like come up with something creative on this side as well. And then depending on how many of these sort of windows in your build are visible, you can either create more or less of these almost like displays. And then you can see how if you manage to sort of create these little frames all the way around the build or on the sides of the build that are visible, you can create almost like a little story for your build. And I really like how this looks with the columns and the flat roof. So that's all for this video. If you made it this far, you now know how to build this armory design. Hopefully you liked it. I'm really happy with how it turned out. If you did, please do leave a like and subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.